We spend billions on modern medicine, yet the Vikings conquered half of Europe with nothing but plants from their gardens. No pharmacies, no prescriptions, just nature's pharmacy, growing right outside their longhouses. Today, we're uncovering 9 Viking remedies that modern science has proven actually work, and you can grow them in your backyard. Meadowsweet, Filipendula ulmaria, the original aspirin. Long before Bayer synthesized aspirin in a laboratory, Vikings were getting the same pain relief from a delicate white flower that grew in their meadows and along stream banks. They called it Minjodurt, mead herb, because it was essential for flavoring their honey wine. But the Vikings valued meadowsweet for far more than its sweet, almond-like fragrance. This was the go-to remedy for the aches and pains of Viking life, and that life was hard on the body, rowing long ships for days, wielding heavy weapons, working in cold, damp conditions. Vikings dealt with chronic pain that would send modern people straight to the medicine cabinet. Instead, they turned to meadowsweet. Viking healers made tea from the flowers and leaves for headaches, joint pain, and fever. They understood that this plant had a cooling effect on the body, bringing down fevers and reducing inflammation. For digestive complaints, common in an era of preserved fish and salted meat, meadowsweet tea was the first line of defense. The science behind meadowsweet is absolutely fascinating. The plant contains salicylic acid, the precursor to modern aspirin. But here's where it gets interesting. Meadowsweet also contains compounds that protect the stomach lining, meaning it provides pain relief without the gastric irritation that synthetic aspirin causes. It's like nature designed a better version of aspirin before we even knew we needed it. Research published in the Journal of Agricultural and Food Chemistry identified over 60 compounds in meadowsweet with anti-inflammatory properties. Studies have shown it's effective for arthritis, headaches, and fever reduction. The plant also contains tannins that help with diarrhea and digestive upset, exactly what the Vikings used it for. Meadowsweet thrives in moist, rich soil and partial shade. If you have a boggy area in your yard that's hard to plant, meadowsweet will flourish there. It's a perennial that comes back stronger each year, eventually forming large, fragrant clumps. For modern use, harvest flowers and leaves just as the plant begins to bloom. That's when the active compounds are most concentrated. Dry them in a dark, airy place, then store in airtight containers. To make meadowsweet tea, use 1 to 2 teaspoons of dried herb per cup of hot water. Steep for 10 minutes, strain, and drink up to 3 times daily for pain or inflammation. The taste is pleasant, slightly sweet with hints of almond and vanilla. For acute headaches, drink a cup at the first sign of pain. For chronic conditions like arthritis, consistent daily use over several weeks shows the best results. One caution: because meadowsweet contains salicylates, people with aspirin allergies should avoid it. And like any pain reliever, it's meant for occasional use, not as a substitute for addressing underlying health issues. Yarrow, Achillea millefolium, the Viking battlefield surgeon. The Vikings called it nosebleed plant. But that humble name doesn't do justice to what might be the most important herb in their medical arsenal. When a Viking warrior took an axe wound in battle, the first thing his companions reached for wasn't a prayer, it was yarrow. This feathery-leafed plant was so crucial to Viking survival that they carried it on every voyage, tucked into leather pouches alongside their weapons. They'd crush the fresh leaves and pack them directly into wounds, or brew them into a tea for internal bleeding. Viking women kept yarrow growing near every homestead, knowing that survival often depended on having it within arm's reach. Here's what makes this remarkable. Modern science has validated exactly what the Vikings knew 1,000 years ago. Yarrow contains over 120 compounds, including acetylene, named after the Greek hero Achilles, who supposedly used it to treat his soldiers' wounds. Research published in the Journal of Ethnopharmacology confirms yarrow's ability to stop bleeding up to 30% faster than untreated wounds. It's a natural styptic, meaning it causes blood vessels to contract and promotes rapid clotting. But the Vikings were onto something even more sophisticated. They used yarrow for fever reduction, digestive issues, and even toothaches. Modern studies show the plant contains salicylic acid, the same active ingredient in aspirin, along with powerful anti-inflammatory compounds. Growing yarrow today couldn't be easier. It's practically indestructible, thriving in poor soil and drought conditions that would kill most garden plants. Plant it once, and it'll come back year after year. For modern use, harvest the leaves and flowers during peak bloom. Make a poultice by crushing fresh leaves and applying directly to minor cuts and scrapes. For tea, steep 1 tablespoon of dried yarrow in hot water for 10 minutes. It's bitter, so honey helps. Just remember, yarrow is powerful medicine, so use it sparingly and never on deep wounds that need professional medical attention. Angelica, Archangelica, the Viking plague fighter. When the Black Death swept through Europe in the 14th century, there was one plant that people believed could ward off the pestilence. Angelica. But the Vikings knew about this towering herb's protective powers centuries earlier, calling it kvan, and considering it a gift from the gods themselves. Angelica is an impressive plant, growing up to 6 feet tall with massive umbrella-like flower clusters. The Vikings didn't just use one part, they used everything. The roots were dug up in autumn and dried for winter medicine. The stems were candied as both food and medicine. The seeds were collected and chewed for digestive complaints. Young Vikings were taught to identify Angelica before almost any other plant because it was that essential to survival. Viking healers prescribed Angelica for respiratory infections, digestive problems, and what they called cold sickness, likely what we'd recognize as flu or pneumonia. They'd make a decoction by boiling the roots, creating a bitter but potent brew that was given to anyone showing signs of serious illness. Modern research has caught up with Viking wisdom in a big way. Angelica contains over 60 active compounds, including coumarins and furanocoumarins, that have demonstrated antiviral, antibacterial, and antifungal properties. A study in phytotherapy research found that Angelica root extract showed significant activity against respiratory pathogens. The plant also contains compounds that help expel mucus from the lungs, exactly what you need when fighting a chest infection. What's particularly fascinating is Angelica's effect on the immune system. Research shows it can stimulate white blood cell production, essentially doing what the Vikings believed, strengthening the body's defenses against disease. Growing Angelica requires patience. It's a biennial, meaning it takes 2 years to complete its life cycle, but it's worth the wait. Plant seeds in fall or early spring in rich, moist soil with partial shade. The plant prefers cool climates, making it perfect for northern gardens. For modern use, harvest roots in the fall of the second year, wash thoroughly, and dry in a warm, dark place. Make a decoction by simmering 1 teaspoon of dried, chopped root in 2 cups of water for 15 minutes. Strain and drink up to 3 cups daily when fighting respiratory infections. The taste is intensely bitter and slightly sweet. Definitely an acquired taste, but that's how you know it's working. Important note, Angelica contains compounds that increase sun sensitivity, so avoid excessive sun exposure when using it, and never harvest wild Angelica unless you're absolutely certain of identification. It resembles poison hemlock, which is deadly. Enjoying raiding the past with us? Then consider hyping this video. It really helps a channel like mine get more views and allows me to create more content. To hype the video on your mobile device, swipe left on the comment preview carousel until the option to hype the video surfaces, or tap, and the carousel will change to show the option to hype. Your support helps a ton. Now back to the ancient Viking remedies still used today. Elderberry, Sambucus nigra, the Viking immune system booster. The Vikings called the elder tree the medicine chest of the common people, and with good reason. This wasn't just a plant, it was an entire pharmacy growing in one place. Every part had a use, from the flowers to the berries to the bark. Viking settlements always had elder trees growing nearby, and harming one unnecessarily was considered bad luck. That wasn't superstition. It was practical wisdom about protecting a vital resource. Elderberries were harvested in late summer and preserved for winter, when illness struck hardest. Viking healers made elderberry syrup by cooking the berries with honey, creating a thick, dark medicine that was given at the first sign of cold or flu. They understood that elderberry worked best as prevention and early treatment, not after illness had fully taken hold. The flowers, which bloom in early summer, were made into tea for fever and respiratory infections. Vikings would drink hot elderflower tea and wrap themselves in furs to sweat out illness, a practice that modern medicine recognizes as helping the body fight infection. Modern science has validated elderberry as one of the most effective natural antivirals we have. Multiple clinical studies have shown that elderberry extract can reduce the duration and severity of flu symptoms by up to 4 days. A study published in the Journal of International Medical Research found that 93% of flu patients taking elderberry extract showed significant improvement within 2 days, compared to 6 days for the placebo group. The secret is in elderberry's unique compounds, called anthocyanins, which give the berries their deep purple color. These compounds prevent viruses from entering cells and replicating. Elderberry also stimulates the immune system to produce more cytokines, the proteins that coordinate the body's response to infection. Growing elderberry is remarkably easy. These hardy shrubs tolerate almost any soil and grow quickly, often producing berries in the second year. Plant at least 2 varieties for cross-pollination and better berry production. They prefer full sun, but tolerate partial shade. For modern use, harvest berries when they're deep purple and slightly soft, usually late August or September. Never eat raw elderberries. They contain compounds that can cause nausea. Always cook them first. The simplest preparation is elderberry syrup. Simmer 4 cups of fresh berries, or 2 cups dried, with 2 cups of water until reduced by half. Strain, then add 2 cups of honey while still warm. This keeps in the refrigerator for several months. Take 1 tablespoon daily during cold and flu season for prevention, or 1 tablespoon every 3 hours at the first sign of illness. The taste is pleasantly tart and slightly sweet. Kids usually love it, which makes it easy to get them to take their medicine. Elderflowers can be harvested in late spring when fully open. Dry them carefully to preserve their delicate fragrance. Then use for tea. 1 tablespoon per cup of hot water, steeped for 5 minutes. It's one of the most pleasant-tasting medicinal teas you'll ever try. Nettle, Urtica dioica, the Viking nutritional powerhouse. If you've ever brushed against stinging nettle, you know it's a plant that demands respect. Those tiny hollow hairs inject histamine and other compounds that cause an intense burning sensation. Yet the Vikings actively cultivated this aggressive plant. And for good reason. Nettle was one of their most valuable resources for both food and medicine. Viking warriors consumed nettle soup and tea regularly, believing it gave them strength and endurance. They weren't wrong. Nettle is one of the most nutrient-dense plants on Earth, containing more protein than most vegetables, along with exceptional levels of iron, calcium, magnesium, and vitamins A, C, and K. For people living in harsh northern climates with limited food variety, nettle provided crucial nutrition during the hunger gap of early spring when winter stores were depleted, but new crops hadn't matured. Viking healers used nettle for joint pain and arthritis, conditions common among people who spent their lives in cold, damp conditions. They'd make a practice called urtication, deliberately striking arthritic joints with fresh nettle stems. It sounds like torture, but there's method to the madness. The histamine and other compounds in nettle stings actually reduce inflammation and pain in the underlying joint. For internal use, Vikings made nettle tea and soup, consuming it regularly throughout spring and summer. They used it to treat anemia, kidney problems, and allergies. Viking women drank nettle tea during pregnancy and while nursing, knowing it increased milk production and provided essential nutrients. Modern research has confirmed nettle's impressive medicinal properties. Studies show it's effective for treating benign prostatic hyperplasia, enlarged prostate, reducing allergy symptoms, and managing arthritis pain. A study in phytomedicine found that nettle extract was as effective as anti-inflammatory drugs for arthritis, but without the side effects. Research also confirms nettle's traditional use for allergies. It contains compounds that prevent histamine release, essentially working like a natural antihistamine. The nutritional analysis of nettle is remarkable. It contains 25% protein by dry weight, more than most legumes. It's also one of the best plant sources of iron, making it valuable for treating anemia. The vitamin K content supports bone health and blood clotting. Growing nettle is almost too easy. The challenge is keeping it contained. Plant it in a large pot or a designated area where it can't spread. It prefers rich, moist soil and partial shade. Harvest young leaves in spring before the plant flowers, wearing thick gloves. Once nettle flowers, the leaves develop gritty particles that can irritate the urinary tract. For modern use, cooking or drying nettle completely neutralizes the sting. Make nettle tea by steeping 1 tablespoon of dried leaves in hot water for 10 minutes. The taste is mild and slightly grassy, pleasant and easy to drink. For maximum benefit, drink 2 to 3 cups daily. Fresh nettle can be cooked like spinach. Just blanch it briefly in boiling water, then sauté with garlic and butter. It's delicious and incredibly nutritious. Nettle tincture is another option. Fill a jar with fresh nettle leaves, cover with vodka, and let sit for 4 to 6 weeks. Strain and take 1 teaspoon twice daily for allergies or inflammation. Willow bark, Salix alba, the Viking pain reliever. When Vikings suffered from severe pain, whether from battle wounds, toothaches, or the chronic joint problems that came from their physically demanding lifestyle, they turned to the bark of the willow tree. They called it pain tree, and it was one of their most trusted remedies for suffering that would otherwise be unbearable. Viking healers would harvest willow bark in early spring when the sap was rising. making it easier to strip from the tree. They'd dry it carefully, then prepare it as a decoction by boiling it in water for extended periods. The resulting bitter tea was given for headaches, fever, joint pain, and inflammation. Vikings understood that willow worked slowly but effectively, and that regular use provided better results than occasional doses. The science behind willow bark is straightforward. It contains salicin, which the body converts to salicylic acid, the same active ingredient in aspirin. In fact, aspirin was originally synthesized from compounds found in willow bark, but like Meadowsweet, willow bark contains other compounds that buffer its effects, making it gentler on the stomach than synthetic aspirin. Clinical studies have proven willow bark's effectiveness for lower back pain, osteoarthritis, and headaches. A study in the American Journal of Medicine found that willow bark extract was as effective as conventional pain relievers for chronic lower back pain, with significantly fewer side effects. Research shows it takes longer to work than synthetic drugs, usually about a week of regular use, but the effects last longer and are more sustained. Willow bark also has anti-inflammatory and fever-reducing properties. The Vikings used it for what they called joint fire, likely rheumatoid arthritis, and modern research confirms it reduces inflammatory markers in the blood. You can grow willow trees easily from cuttings. Just stick a branch in moist soil, and it'll usually root. Willows prefer wet conditions and grow quickly, often reaching substantial size within a few years. White willow, Salix alba, has the highest salicin content, but most willow species contain useful amounts. For modern use, harvest bark from branches 2 to 3 years old in early spring. Never strip bark from the main trunk, as this can kill the tree. Take only what you need from branches that are being pruned anyway. Dry the bark thoroughly, then store in airtight containers. To make willow bark tea, simmer 1 to 2 teaspoons of dried, chopped bark in 2 cups of water for 10 minutes. Strain and drink up to 3 cups daily. Fair warning, it's extremely bitter. Honey helps, but you'll still taste the bitterness. That's actually a good sign. The more bitter, the higher the salicin content. For chronic pain conditions, consistency matters more than dosage. Regular daily use over several weeks provides better results than occasional high doses. Many people find that willow bark allows them to reduce their use of synthetic pain relievers, which is valuable given the side effects of long-term NSAID use. Important cautions: don't use willow bark if you're allergic to aspirin. Avoid it if you're taking blood thinners, as it has mild anticoagulant effects. And like any pain reliever, it treats symptoms, not underlying causes. Persistent pain requires professional medical evaluation. Chamomile, Matricaria chamomilla, the Viking sleep and digestion aid. The Vikings didn't have the luxury of sleeping pills or antacids, but they had something better: chamomile, a gentle flower that helped them sleep soundly and digest the heavy, preserved foods that sustained them through long winters and longer voyages. They called it mayweed and grew it in every household garden, considering it essential medicine for daily life. Viking healers prescribed chamomile tea for anxiety, insomnia, and digestive complaints. After a heavy meal of salted fish, dried meat, and hard bread, Vikings would drink chamomile tea to ease the inevitable stomach discomfort. For children who couldn't sleep or adults stressed by the constant dangers of Viking life, chamomile provided gentle, reliable relief without the grogginess of stronger herbs. The Vikings also used chamomile externally, making poultices for wounds and skin irritations. They understood that chamomile had both calming and healing properties, making it useful for everything from diaper rash to battle wounds. Modern science has extensively studied chamomile, and the results validate its traditional uses. Chamomile contains over 120 chemical constituents, including apigenin, a compound that binds to the same brain receptors as anti-anxiety medications. A study in the Journal of Clinical Psychopharmacology found that chamomile extract significantly reduced anxiety symptoms in people with generalized anxiety disorder. For sleep, research shows chamomile improves sleep quality and reduces the time it takes to fall asleep. A study with postpartum women found that those who drank chamomile tea for 2 weeks reported significantly better sleep quality than the control group. Chamomile's digestive benefits are equally well documented. It relaxes smooth muscle in the digestive tract, reducing cramping and gas. Studies show it's effective for irritable bowel syndrome, indigestion, and even ulcers. The anti-inflammatory compounds in chamomile help heal the gut lining, while the antispasmodic properties reduce cramping. Growing chamomile is simple. It's one of the easiest herbs for beginners. German chamomile is an annual that self-seeds readily, while Roman chamomile is a perennial ground cover. Both have medicinal properties. though German chamomile is generally considered more potent. Plant in full sun with well-drained soil. Chamomile tolerates poor soil and drought once established. Harvest flowers when fully open, but before they start to fade. The best time is mid-morning, after the dew has dried, but before the heat of the day. Dry flowers carefully in a dark, airy place to preserve their essential oils. Properly dried chamomile should retain its apple-like fragrance. For modern use, chamomile tea is the simplest preparation. Use 1 tablespoon of dried flowers per cup of hot water. Steep for 5 minutes covered to preserve the volatile oils. Then strain. For sleep, drink 1 cup 30 minutes before bed. For digestion, drink after meals. For anxiety, sip throughout the day as needed. The taste is mild, slightly sweet, and apple-like, one of the most pleasant medicinal teas. Unlike many herbal remedies, chamomile is gentle enough for daily use and safe for children, though always check with a pediatrician first. For external use, make a strong chamomile infusion, triple the usual amount of flowers, and use as a wash for skin irritations, minor wounds, or inflamed eyes. Chamomile's anti-inflammatory and antimicrobial properties make it excellent for skincare. Thyme, Thymus vulgaris, the Viking respiratory remedy and preservative. When Vikings needed to preserve meat for long sea voyages or harsh winters, they didn't just rely on salt, they used thyme. This aromatic herb has powerful antimicrobial properties that the Vikings exploited for both food preservation and medicine. But thyme's real value came during the long, cold winters, when respiratory infections could turn deadly. Viking healers made thyme tea for coughs, bronchitis, and chest congestion. They understood that thyme helped expel mucus from the lungs and eased the spasmodic coughing that could exhaust a sick person. For severe respiratory infections, they'd make a steam inhalation by adding thyme to boiling water and having the patient breathe the vapors under a cloth tent. Thyme was also used for digestive complaints and as a topical antiseptic. Vikings would crush fresh thyme and apply it to wounds, or add it to bath water for its cleansing and healing properties. The plant's strong antimicrobial action made it valuable for preventing infection in an era when a simple cut could turn fatal. Modern research has revealed why thyme is so effective. The plant contains thymol and carva compounds with powerful antibacterial, antiviral, and antifungal properties. Studies show thyme essential oil is effective against antibiotic-resistant bacteria, including MRSA. Research published in Medicinal Chemistry found that thymol disrupts bacterial cell membranes, essentially causing the bacteria to leak and die. For respiratory issues, thyme is remarkably effective. The German Commission E, Europe's equivalent of the FDA, has approved thyme for treating bronchitis, whooping cough, and upper respiratory inflammation. Studies show thyme extract reduces coughing frequency and severity while helping expel mucus from the lungs. The combination of antimicrobial action and expectorant properties makes it ideal for respiratory infections. Thyme also has impressive antioxidant properties, higher than most other herbs. This helps explain its traditional use for overall health and longevity. Growing thyme is perfect for beginners. It's nearly indestructible. This Mediterranean herb thrives in poor, dry soil and full sun. In fact, too much water or rich soil reduces its medicinal potency. Plant it once, and it'll come back year after year, spreading slowly into a fragrant mat. There are many varieties, but common thyme, Thymus vulgaris, has the highest medicinal value. Harvest thyme just before it flowers, when the essential oil content is highest. Cut stems in the morning after dew has dried. Dry in bundles, hung upside down in a dark, airy place. Then strip leaves from stems and store in airtight containers. For modern use, thyme tea is the primary preparation. Use 1 teaspoon of dried thyme per cup of hot water, steep covered for 10 minutes, then strain. For respiratory infections, drink 3 to 4 cups daily. The taste is strong and slightly medicinal. Honey and lemon make it more palatable and add their own healing properties. For steam inhalation, add a handful of fresh or dried thyme to a bowl of just boiled water. Lean over the bowl with a towel over your head and breathe deeply for 10 minutes. This delivers thyme's volatile oils directly to the respiratory tract, providing immediate relief for congestion and coughing. Thyme tincture is another option for those who find the tea too strong tasting. Take 1 teaspoon 3 times daily during respiratory infections. Plantain, Plantago major, the Viking first aid plant. Not the banana-like fruit, but the humble weed that grows in nearly every lawn and path. This was one of the Vikings' most important first aid remedies. They called it Waybread, because it grew along every path and road, ensuring that help was always within reach when someone got injured far from home. Viking mothers taught their children to recognize plantain before almost any other plant because it could save their lives. When a Viking got stung by an insect, cut by a blade, or developed a festering wound, the first treatment was plantain. They'd chew fresh leaves to mix them with saliva, which contains its own healing enzymes. Then apply the poultice directly to the injury. For deeper wounds, they'd crush plantain leaves and pack them into the wound to draw out infection and promote healing. Viking healers also used plantain internally for digestive issues, respiratory problems, and urinary tract infections. They made tea from the leaves and gave it to people with chronic coughs or digestive inflammation. The plant's soothing, healing properties worked as well inside the body as outside. Modern science has validated plantain as a legitimate medicinal plant with multiple therapeutic properties. The leaves contain allantoin, a compound that promotes cell growth and tissue repair. This explains why plantain poultices speed wound healing. Studies show plantain also has antibacterial properties, helping prevent infection in wounds. Research published in the Journal of Ethnopharmacology found that plantain extract has significant anti-inflammatory effects, comparable to some pharmaceutical drugs. The plant contains compounds called iridoid glycosides that reduce inflammation and pain. This validates its traditional use for insect stings, minor burns, and inflammatory skin conditions. Plantain is also rich in mucilage, a gel-like substance that soothes irritated tissues. This makes it valuable for digestive inflammation, sore throats, and respiratory irritation. Studies show plantain can help heal ulcers and reduce symptoms of irritable bowel syndrome. The beauty of plantain is that you probably already have it growing in your yard. There are two common species: broadleaf plantain, Plantago major, and narrow-leaf plantain, Plantago lanceolata, and both have medicinal properties. These plants thrive in compacted soil where other plants struggle, which is why they're so common in lawns and paths. For modern use, harvest young, tender leaves in spring and summer. Older leaves become tough and stringy but are still medicinal. For fresh poultices, wash leaves thoroughly, chew or crush them, and apply directly to insect stings, minor cuts, or skin irritations. The relief is often immediate. Plantain is remarkably effective for bee stings and mosquito bites. To make plantain tea, use 1 tablespoon of fresh chopped leaves, or 1 teaspoon dried, per cup of hot water. Steep for 10 minutes, strain, and drink up to 3 cups daily for digestive or respiratory issues. The taste is mild and slightly bitter, not unpleasant. For a healing salve, infuse plantain leaves in olive oil for several weeks. Strain, then mix with melted beeswax, about 1 part wax to 4 parts oil. This creates a first aid ointment that's excellent for minor wounds, burns, and skin irritations. Plantain tincture is useful for internal issues. Fill a jar with fresh plantain leaves, cover with vodka, and let sit for 4 to 6 weeks. Strain and take 1 teaspoon 3 times daily for digestive inflammation or chronic coughs. Conclusion: these 9 Viking remedies represent more than just historical curiosity. They're practical, effective medicine that you can grow in your own backyard. What's remarkable is how accessible these plants remain today. Most grow easily in ordinary gardens, and several are probably already growing as weeds in your yard. Modern science has validated what the Vikings knew through centuries of observation and use. Nature provides powerful medicine when we know where to look. Important disclaimer: the information in this video is for educational purposes only and is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. These remedies are based on historical use and modern research, but they are not substitutes for professional medical care. Always consult with a qualified healthcare provider before using any herbal remedies, especially if you're pregnant, nursing, taking medications, or have existing health conditions. Some herbs can interact with medications or cause allergic reactions. Do your own research and work with knowledgeable practitioners when incorporating herbal medicine into your health routine. Start with 1 or 2 remedies that address your specific needs. Learn to identify them correctly, grow them if possible, and experiment with simple preparations like teas and poultices. The Vikings survived and thrived using these plants, and with proper knowledge and respect, they can enhance your health today. If you found this journey into Viking medicine fascinating, subscribe for more forgotten wisdom that's surprisingly relevant today.